the start of the month, we're automatically bringing cash flow 30 days forward. Sometimes I think agencies make it quite easy for clients to go, okay, we're going to pull the plug. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is how important it is not just for myself to ensure that I am able to work on the business, not in the business.
Again, cash flow is the thing that people just don't really talk about. It's just all wins and client wins and this, but without cash, your business is going to drop, right? And you've been running for about 12 years. I know there's no way you haven't had cash flow issues. What kind of issues have you dealt with and how did you manage them?
Okay, so I am going to sort of touch wood here. We've never had, not that we've not had cash flow issues, but we've never been in a position where we're going, shit, how do we pay the team this month? In our growth sort of journey, I have always probably obsessively managed sort of money in the bank and sort of runaway funds. So I've always been in a position that, my ultimate responsibility is to make sure we can pay the team at the end of the month. That is, as an agency owner, sort of the number one thing I have to make sure we can do. And in order to do that, it's almost accepting that cash flow can be unpredictable. Now, it can be unpredictable for a number of reasons, and I think that doesn't just mean clients aren't paying you, there's not enough sales coming in. It can be tax bill period, as an example. So I think, I have always obsessively managed the money in terms of making sure we have 3 to 6 months money in the bank that we could not take any revenue for. Realistically, right now it's probably about 4 months, in that as you grow, obviously that figure will come down a little bit, but it used to be 7-8 months. And I think what that's given us is it's given us an ability to not have to focus too much on individual months cash flow, and it allows us to take that holistic view. Now, I say that in terms of we've had no, oh shit, how do we pay the team next week? And that is by managing obsessively, by myself not going, okay, great, we're doing $1 million a year, I'm going to go and live a really lavish lifestyle. It's sometimes putting that common sense first and going, before you can do that, before you can go and sort of reap all the rewards yourself, you have to make sure you have that safety net there. But I think on the back of that, yes, there are months, sometimes more often than others, that you will spend more money than comes into the bank that month. And I think this is, when we talk about month to month cash flow, I think, we have implemented a lot of things there to make sure that we're in a better position to not even control what's coming in and what's not, but knowing when things are going to come in. I think that's my biggest piece of advice there. So as an example, thinking very carefully about when you invoice a client. We used to invoice a client, we would take on a new client, we would invoice them on 30 days at the end of that month. Effectively, we were on 60-day payment terms almost without realizing it. We were saying, okay, we'll issue an invoice after the end of the month, 30 days. That is 60 days after we started work. From a cash flow perspective, that is a 60-day payment terms effectively. So we brought that forward to say, okay, we're still going to invoice on 30 days, but we are going to invoice on 30 days from the start of the month. We're automatically bringing cash flow 30 days forward. We are also looking at things like bringing in an incentive for signing longer contracts. So I think in the agency world, one of the things is that agency revenue can sometimes be unpredictable, especially when there are ups and downs for businesses, the economy. Sometimes I think agencies make it quite easy for clients to go, okay, we're going to pull the plug in 30 days time. Now, whilst, I certainly think there's always a balance, one of the things that we've done is we will incentivize clients buying into that sort of longer term mentality. We will offer, sort of as an example, a 10% discount on annual contracts on the grounds that we have locked in that revenue on set payment terms for 12 months. So it's managing cash flow. And I think it's cash flow management tactics as opposed to almost that shit, what do we do in an emergency? It's having those tactics in place to go, we need to know what is coming in the bank each and every month so we can plan accordingly. So yeah, building out things like that, and really stopping to think about, are there things we can do to optimize cash flow that are in our control? And I think with things like payment terms, locking in longer term deals with an incentive, make sure there's an incentive for the client there. There are absolutely ways that you can do that, and put yourself in more of a position of control over that cash flow.
Awesome. I love it. There's a lot of value in that. And what about spending habits? Because, okay, so let's say you're an agency owner, you've got the 6 months in the bank. Next thing, you think that you should be going to all these SEO events that are halfway across the world. Let's fly business. Let's bring the leadership team. Let's do that. What's been your what would be your advice for somebody maybe being a bit more frugal, or
100%.
What do you do?
Know what the return is. And I think, any money that you spend, any spending, any outgoings, you should always know what the return is. Now, I'm purposefully not calling that ROI, because when we talk about ROI, we often think about a return in sort of financial returns. But I think when why are you spending that money? What do you want to get out of it? Then you can make much, much better and much more informed decisions. So as an example, if you are going, if some of the team are going to an overseas event, is that does that involve a speaking opportunity? Does that involve, does that include something where we can build our name? So then is it a marketing spend as opposed to a learning and development spend? Can we split the resources between marketing and professional development? If it is almost a learning, if it is professional development, if we're sending people to an event to learn, are the right people going to the right events? I think one of the things that we've often said is, there are some great events out there. There are also some great events out there that are wrong for certain people because they're not going to come away with anything. Or are we sending people, or are we going to those events as a networking opportunity to meet new people, to meet potential clients, potential partners? I think once it's about knowing why, rather than just spending. It's about saying, why are we doing this, and what do we expect to get out of it? And you can apply that to anything, whether it's marketing, whether it's professional development. It's just being able to answer that question on, why are we spending this money? And I think, there has to be a point where, you have to put in a minimum, sort of anything that we will spend over, say, £500, £1,000. Different agencies will have different sort of points of consideration there. But, I'm not talking, should we go and buy the team a coffee at £3 a coffee? I'm talking, significant costs that need to have some sort of a return. It's knowing why. Why are we spending this money, and what do we expect to get out of it as an agency?
Awesome. And talking about costs.
Yeah.
What has been your most expensive lesson through your agency?
The most expensive lesson, I think and there's two. I was thinking a lot about this, and I think, there's two. The first one is 3 years ago, we had an opportunity to expand our service offering from organic to paid. So we had an opportunity to bring in, there was an agency that I was quite close with, that we shared a number of clients with, and for various reasons, the founder moved on to other projects, and that agency sort of dissolved. They didn't wind down, but they weren't wound up financially, but the founder was involved in a rapidly growing e-commerce project, and his attention went elsewhere. That agency wasn't necessarily at a place where there was value in selling. Should I say, took the gamble to go, right, okay, we'll plug them into the agency here, and we will start offering paid. That was an incredibly expensive lesson, which hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I regret that so much for two reasons. One, it took our focus away from who we are and what we do. We are organic through and through. That is where my background is. That is where our senior team's background is. It was a distraction. It distracted my attention and our senior team's attention away from doing what we've spent 10 years building up, and took us into territory that we weren't necessarily confident on. And it took us into a position where we didn't have the reputation in that space. So very quickly, some of the existing clients that agency was servicing, yes, they came on initially, and we brought that team in. We folded that team into the agency. But realistically, when contracts were up, when people moved on, we were no longer the best option out there. And, I've always been quite obsessive in terms of going, we do what we do and we do it very well. It was an opportunity that, looking back, was too good to be true, that we could just fold in a team. And we're not talking a large team, but I think the reality is we got sort of 3, maybe 6 months in, and it was very, very obvious that we were funding, we were carrying that. So that was an expensive lesson. It was an expensive lesson, but I say an expensive lesson, but an incredibly valuable lesson, because we as an SEO agent, as an organic agency, we get asked all the time, can you also take on PPC, paid social? It taught us that we probably could, but we don't want to, and that we are better off staying true to our values, staying true to who we are, and doing what we know we do very, very well. So it's not a lesson that I regret doing it, but the learnings were so incredibly valuable. And I think sometimes you have to make mistakes and own those mistakes to realize why we shouldn't do that, why we should focus on doing what we do. It was an expensive lesson, but not necessarily it was a lesson that we learned so incredibly much from.
Yeah, and it probably saved you more in the long term as well.
Oh, 100%. And it really backed up why we do what we do and why we have never grown outside of our core offering. We see other agencies who are expanding into social, expanding into paid search, expanding into wider content creation. It's not who we are and it's not who we want to be. So I think, knowing who we are and who we're not, it's very, very, very valuable lesson in that. And then the other one, and I really couldn't, when we talked about this question, I really couldn't decide which to put forward, hence why I'm putting both forward. The other one is not addressing cultural mismatch fast enough. You don't always know when you hire somebody whether they're going to be a cultural fit. And I think, there are times when you can hire someone who's brilliant, and it's not about experience. It's not about who that individual is in terms of what skills they've got to offer. But if someone doesn't fit inside an agency culturally, in my experience, it will never, ever work out. And I've had multiple experiences where we've not addressed the cultural mismatch of a or several individuals fast enough, because we've almost placed not too much value, but we've known what they're offering to us is in terms of skills. But we've I don't want to say ignored, because we were aware of this, but I think dealing with a cultural mismatch where we are today is that if there is someone who is not working out culturally, and look, that doesn't mean they're an asshole, it doesn't mean they're toxic, but I think sometimes you have to realize that where we as an agency want to go, what we believe, how we think things should be done, and how we do things, it will not always align with everybody. And I think, I'm a big believer that everyone should have a voice. Everyone should have the ability to feed in their own experiences, contribute to how we do things. And we operate very, very collectively on that front. But there are times when, as a senior team, as smaller pod teams, you will just clash with people, because ultimately you have a fundamental mismatch of either where you think things should be going, and I believe as an MD, as a CEO, you've got a responsibility to make sure that everyone is sort of rowing in the same direction, as it were. So we've had other expensive lessons there where we've not addressed a cultural mismatch fast enough. And that doesn't, I'm not necessarily saying that's a hire fast, fire fast. Addressing a cultural mismatch doesn't always mean that person has to be let go from the business. We found in some cases that person is just in the wrong role. They maybe been hired into a role, and after a couple of months, you realize they're not the right person for that role. They're better suited to something else. But I think addressing a cultural mismatch ASAP. There are plenty of instances where we have learned very expensive lessons by not addressing that fast enough. The fallout from not doing that, I think, can be huge. You can then in turn end up alienating or losing other great team members because they're frustrated that that isn't being addressed.
I love that. One thing that we do when we sign new clients is we probably take about 50% of the time, not going over just the roles and responsibilities and what you actually want from an output perspective, but is that person going to fit culturally? What the company culture is like? What's the personality traits of your top performers? The person this person will be reporting to, what are they like? What do they look for in somebody? DISC assessments, all of this. Because the beauty of that is that hopefully once you get all of that and we can find somebody for that, it means they're going to be with you for longer. Because again,
100%.
you can have, in fact, I think it was Eli Schwartz said it on one of our podcasts. You can have somebody that is unbelievable at what they do, but if they don't fit into the 20-person team, 10-person team, 2-person team, they're going to be out the door within a few months.
Of course they are. And I think, but I think also to add to that, Josh, it's when I talk about this, I'm also meaning, and I can give an example, a head of SEO who we had a couple of years back. She was absolutely fantastic technical SEO, but there was a fundamental mismatch in, as an agency, we are obviously spread, our 3 core teams are technical SEO and SEO strategy, content and digital PR. Now, once this individual was in the head of SEO role, they had almost a fundamental they didn't believe that digital PR was a tactic worth exploring. And I think as we got in, we maybe naively thought, well, we can change their mindset. They were of the, and I think it comes to looking at backgrounds, learning lessons. I really strongly believe that you learn more from failing than you do from succeeding. And I think as an entrepreneur, as an MD, as a CEO, as a manager, you have to have these experiences to grow from and learn from. But I think, when there is, especially in SEO, I typically find you will often get, say, an SEO with an enterprise background where complex tech SEO is going to have a much, much more important role in driving growth than, say, working with a startup who's maybe well-funded, but they've got a 10, 20-page site and a blog. And I think, addressing that, so, those fundamentals on how they believe search should be done. And I think, I'm certainly not saying that there is a right and a wrong way to do SEO, but as an agency, there is a way that we do SEO, that we sell SEO, that we approach SEO. And if an individual doesn't fit that, or is sometimes unwilling to adapt to the way we do things, and I don't mean in terms of processes, as I say, we're very, very collective in terms of evolving processes, valuing feedback. But in terms of that, if you have an SEO who is, SEO success comes predominantly from putting 80% of resources into tech SEO, that person is not going to work out here, because myself and our senior team and our SEO team has been built on the sort of basis that content and links are the key growth drivers in SEO. So I think, it's also, to me, digging a little bit deeper. Again, you can have someone who maybe fits in, and, I think culturally it's a loose term, isn't it? But I think, also getting that, especially in an area such as SEO, what is the fundamental, understanding and their thoughts on the direction of search? I think, if you have a head of SEO who is a big believer that links can and should be bought, not earned with PR, then there is going to be a cultural mismatch with a team that is predominantly earning links.
Awesome. I love it. And you briefly touched on how important failures are to teach us. And I remember when we interviewed Kevin Indig, he actually talked about how he has a notebook where he writes down all his failures, and then he time blocks a part in his calendar every 2 weeks. I think it's a Friday. And he sits down and he just goes over them, because you can forget about them so easy, especially when you're doing a million things. And he'll literally dedicate, I think it was an hour, where he'll sit down and be like, okay, what did I learn from that lesson? What did I learn from that? And I thought that was really, really strong.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And I think, it's the look, I've been quite vocal on social in the past about this whole culture of it's okay to fail. And, I'm quite opinionated in it. I'm a big, big believer that you learn far more from failing than you do from succeeding. It's far easier to go, why didn't that, and I say, failing is a term that has a lot of sort of negative connections with it. And I think failing is sometimes the wrong way to term it. But as in the business world, it often gets called a failure. If you learn from something that didn't go as planned, then in my opinion, it's not a failure. It's a learning opportunity. But I think, there is a point when you still have a duty to clients, and failing on a client's money, in my opinion, is not okay. If that is in terms of, if you're an agency, you ultimately have a responsibility to almost do what you said you would do. And I think there's a big thing on failing being, look, if you're being engaged to do digital PR, you take, let's say, 10 grand off a client and you deliver nothing for that, and you go, oh, the campaign failed. To me, that is not okay. You are not doing what you were engaged to do. But if you are working on, on something that is, an ongoing project, which again is why as an agency, we will not take on standalone projects, because I think, nobody can guarantee the success of an individual project. Some things will go better than others. And that allows you to build in that culture of learning from things that didn't go right to make sure that you can double down on the things that do go right. But I think, if you are, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of, certainly in the digital PR world, there was a lot of comments thrown around that you can't predict the outcome. If you don't deliver what you would say you would for a client, it's almost not your fault. I think there's a big difference between being accountable and sort of having a culture where you accept that some things will happen, some things will go better than others. And as long as you have those feedback loops in place to learn from the things that didn't to improve, and as long as you set up in a way that makes that part of the process, then I think you're always onto a winner, because you're always in sort of that continuous improvement mindset.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this conversation about scaling agencies and hiring top talent, I want to share something that might help you. Are you struggling to find A players for your digital marketing agency? We've got you covered. For SEO experts who turn rankings into revenue, head to SEOforhire.co. For paid media specialists who boost your bottom line, check out paidmediajobs.com. And if you're looking for foot rubs, you're definitely in the wrong podcast. All right, let's jump back into the episode. I love it. And one thing that I've noticed, so I'm just turned 26. I've only been in business 3 years, very, very early in my career.
Yeah.
And I've witnessed people over promise and under deliver time and time again. And from interviewing a load of successful people like yourselves and getting mentored, one thing that I've learned is that your word is what will carry you through the decades. And
Absolutely.
It's just, there's so many people doing that right now. So I love 100%. That you mentioned that.
100%, and I think it's, there are certainly in the world we work in SEO and PR, there is no way to guarantee something, and there's no way to guarantee an individual campaign will perform or an individual piece of content will perform, which I think comes down to how you sell, and I think, to me, which is where strategy comes in place. And I am very, very vocal and opinionated on the fact that not enough SEOs and PRs have taken sufficient time to become great at strategy. There's I believe one of the industry's biggest issues is that tactics and strategy get confused so often. If what you're selling to a prospect is the journey to a goal, a strategy, a way to achieve a goal, then you are onto a winner. If what you are selling is 10 links, 20 links, then you are setting yourself up to be judged on that individual. It's not even an outcome, because you can go and deliver 10, 20 links that have no impact on the metrics that matter. So I think, this is we can talk about, the way teams manage it. We can talk about the way, you can manage a client relationship like that, but it fundamentally comes down to the way you sell a service.
I love it. And James, over your 12-year agency journey, has there been a time where you guys felt stuck on whatever it was, and how did you break through it?
Oh, 100%. I think, and I think if if someone tells you they've never felt stuck, I think they're not being true to themselves. I would say there are probably 2 to 3 times a year, but I think it's a good thing, because I think, if you are feeling, maybe stuck's the wrong terminology, but I think if you are feeling that you don't know where you need to go next, then I think you're probably not taking enough risks. You're probably playing it too safe. I think, when you are in that growth mindset and you are able to actually think, we are stuck. I had a conversation with our senior leadership team just this morning on a very similar thing. We sat down and we had a leadership team meeting, and we were saying we want, my sort of direction was that for 2025, I want to increase our targets. I want to put us back into growth mode. We've taken some of the last 6 months to really double down on some internal restructuring, some operations. So I'm going, right, okay, I now want us to go back into a bit of growth mode. I want to almost accelerate our trajectory. How are we going to get there? And I think ultimately, when you feel stuck, as we're terming it, it doesn't mean to say you don't know the answers. It doesn't mean to say you can't find the answers. It probably just means that you need to go back into that planning mode. And I'm a big believer that, the sooner you accept that what got you here won't get you there, the sooner you can overcome almost growth blockers, as they were. I think it's whether it's the team, whether it's processes, whether it's the type of clients you're working with, what gets you to a certain point, if you are feeling stuck, as it were, you are probably in a position where you need to go, right, what's not working right now to get us to that next level? It doesn't mean to say it hasn't worked to get you to where you are today. And I think if you go in with that mindset, you are in a position to go, that was the right decision a year ago, but to shift things up a gear, to change things, we now need to do things differently. We need to change things. So I think, I think sometimes if you're feeling stuck, as it were, it's an opportunity to get stuck in and go, right, what do we need to do differently to get us to the next stage of our journey?
I love that. And that's something that I've personally gone through. I've had to realize that everything in business is in cycles. When I was young, like going at it, I was like, right, growth. That's all we need to do, right? That's all I need to focus on. And I used to not like it, having to go through processes and like, is this run the right way? Because I love it now. But then I was like, right, no, we need more clients. We need more. And I think it's just knowing that you have to go through those cycles it's the same with hibernating. It's the same within the gym. Like it's the winter month where you put on the muscle, the summer you take it off. And I think it's really nice.
But I think it's also, accepting that it's okay to slow down. Sometimes you have to slow down, and sometimes, it doesn't always have to be growth. Sometimes, as I say, we've spent the last 6 to 9 months, we've purposely taken our foot off the gas a little bit in terms of growth, but that's to set us up for that next stage. And I think, it is okay to slow down sometimes. You don't, as an agency, you don't always have to be going at 100 miles an hour. Sometimes you need to slow down a little bit.
I love it. And James, what is one thing that you wish you knew at the start that you know now?
One thing I wish I knew at the start that I know now. It's that the sooner you stop caring what your competitors are doing, the sooner you will start to grow and make the right decisions. I used to be not obsessively, I know some people are absolutely, whether, that isn't just in the agency world and, in the wider business world, we have clients who they're more obsessed with how their competitors are performing, than how they're performing. And I think, to me, the day I stopped caring, and there's a big difference between caring and paying attention, massive difference. The day I stopped caring about what our competitors were doing, other agencies, was I can pinpoint that to the day we started rapidly growing. I think, the reality is certainly when you're looking in from the outside, you don't know the context. Now, you can compare your growth journey, the scale of your growth, the rate of your growth to another agency. You don't know whether they've had investment. You don't know whether they've got people there who've done it 3 times before. And if you are doing it for the first time and bootstrapping it, it is such a dangerous game to compare your growth to someone who's in a very, very different situation. So I think the one thing that I wish I'd known a lot earlier was actually don't worry, don't feel jealous, don't compare yourself to other agencies who might be competing against you in pitches, might be competing against you for the same client base. But actually, your growth journey and their growth journey are almost certainly very, very different. Carve out your own path and focus on doing your own thing as opposed to trying to, go, okay, this agency's grown headcount by 3 times this year. We've not grown at all. It doesn't mean they're profitable. You don't know the context of that. So I think, being in a position where you are able to, care about what you're doing and how your agency is growing, not how your competitors are growing, because you don't know the full story.
I absolutely love that. One of my mentors has drilled it into me that comparison is the thief of joy. And if you plan in decades, you stop looking
100%.
Aside and you're looking way in front.
I agree.
I love that. So, James, in terms of knowledge areas or skills that you need to master as an entrepreneur, has there been any area that you kind of wish you knew at the start, or that's been a struggle for you?
I think the thing I've always struggled with is I struggled with for a long time was knowing when to delegate something. I think, I started the agency when I was 23, 24. And I think back then I was quite young. I was quite naive. I was, dare I say it, quite arrogant. I thought, oh, I can, and I think this comes from the fact that, I am first and foremost an SEO. My background is SEO. So I think I started the agency myself, and then I brought in a couple of other people quite slowly. I never set out to grow an agency. So, for a long time, probably the first 4 to 5 years, I was certainly the core of delivery in the agency. I was doing the core of the work, and I had, a couple of roles that were supporting me in doing that. So I think what that meant is when we started to grow rapidly, I wasn't delegating as much as I could, on the grounds that I was almost, okay, well, I can do that myself. I don't need to delegate it. I think looking back, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is how important it is, not just for myself to ensure that I am able to work on the business, not in the business, and for other people's development to delegate, coach, mentor, and support. But yeah, I think that's something I struggled with for a long time. Almost that, having that confidence to delegate and almost to see its purpose early on. In the early days, I think, there are times when, certainly when you've grown in the way we did, which was from, myself being an SEO and, founding an agency that way, as opposed to being an entrepreneur who's seen an opportunity to build an agency and bringing in other people to maybe deliver that work from day one. I think for certainly the first couple of years, there is no doubt that I was the most experienced SEO here. And I think, what that led me to almost take that approach of is that, well, I'm the most experienced, I should do this. There are times 10 years, 10 years ago, when I was working 70, 80 hour weeks, and I absolutely burned myself out, and I think, I learned that the hard way, that delegating doesn't have to mean losing quality control. It's about, sometimes delegating, and I'm a big advocate now for delegating internally sometimes when someone might not be on the face of it ready. Almost, I guess you could call it throwing people in at the deep end, but that for their own development is amazing. It doesn't mean that you have to lose quality control. It's an opportunity to mentor that person, to coach that person. It doesn't mean that output to a client has to be inferior, but as a learning opportunity, delegating to someone before they think they're ready is, to me, such a powerful technique you can apply.
I love that. We used to have a guy that worked with us called Jay, and on the interviews, what he said is that he just wanted to get out of his comfort zone. He thought he had a ceiling in his last job, and anyway, we hired him. And 2 weeks later, we had our event in Manchester, which we brought him over for. And he said public speaking was his most thing that he's feared off. And I said, well, how about you get up after my talk and do 5 minutes on onboarding process? We're onboarding you. I think it'd be great to do it. And he was like, can I please come back to you on that one? So that's kind of my definition of throwing
I agree.
in the deep end.
I agree. And I think, nothing's as bad as people fear it will be. And once they've done it once, they realize that actually that isn't as scary as I thought it was. I can do this. So yeah, again, a lesson that I learned the hard way, but I think it totally shifted my approach to developing people.
Awesome. Last question I've got for you, James. So you mentioned the next 6 months is growth focused, right?
Yes.
Let's say you're walking in with your strategy and your leadership team, and you're sitting down, you're like, right, how do we grow significantly in the next 6 months? What kind of strategies are you talking about?
We are looking at lead generation. We're looking at how can we double or triple the number of leads that we generate. And I think, that is look, I think the agency owners often talk about, those sort of feast or famine cycles. You've either got way too many leads or you've not got enough, and I think to me, you need to be generating more leads than you need. So I'm a massive, massive advocate of when times are quiet, and we can interpret times are quiet in a number of different ways. I think times are quiet or where things aren't where you want to be. So, the same applies to if you want to kickstart a period of growth. So, now we're going into 2025 and we're going, okay, we want to re-enter growth mode. We need leads to be busier, significantly busier than where they are now to hit our growth goals. So it doesn't mean to say that things are, I think that whole feast or famine it's not always representative, but it's a great way to define it. It doesn't mean things are dead or quiet right now, but what we know we need to hit our goals is more leads, significantly more leads than we have now. Otherwise, we will just keep growing at the same rate, or things will carry on at the same rate as they are now. So we need more leads, but I'm a big advocate of going, okay, how do we get to 3 or 4 times the number of leads that we are getting right now? On the thing of, if you're only doing what you're doing now, and I think it comes back to what I said before, if things are getting stuck, if you're feeling stuck, I think you can apply the same thing to, to growth in terms of driving your business. If you want to do more than you're doing now, often something has to change. Now, sometimes you can just put more investment into the channels that are working right now. But what's changing there is your marketing budget. You might need to double or triple your budget. You might need to bring new tactics in. But I think ultimately setting goals that most people would go, they are not achievable. If you set a goal and work backwards from it, I would strongly recommend anyone go and read a book that's called Working Backwards. It was written by 2 guys who used to be at Amazon. It's hands down one of the best books that I've ever read. And it massively, massively changed my mindset about business strategy, but also, client strategy. You have to have a goal, and you then work backwards from it. You go, where do we want to be in not just 1 year, but 2 years, 3 years? And go, what needs to change for us to get there? If you can start with the end goal and work backwards from that, and then map out what would need to happen for us to hit that, you are not thinking about things based on your current situation. You are going, let's say we want to triple revenue in 3 years, as an example. We're going, right, okay, why aren't we hitting that right now? Is it team structure, team size? Is it leads? Is it average client revenue? You can start to pin out different scenarios, and you can go to hit that, and how that maps out over 1, 2, 3 years. This would need to change. You will get to the root cause of, dare I say, your problems, but the things that are blocking your growth to that level right now, the things that need to change, you will get there far, far, far faster. But I'm a big believer that when certainly in a, I don't think we're officially in a recession, but when economies are maybe a bit quieter, then the ones who win are the ones who have the guts to go and spend more on marketing, do more marketing. You can never do enough marketing as long as you are doing the right thing. You can never get your name out there enough. So the sort of conversations I'm having with the senior team are, if we were to quadruple what we spend on marketing, what would we do? They're the sort of conversations that I'm having. I'm going, if we were to change things significantly, and that can be spending more money, that can be doing more, that can be bringing in more people, looking at the different scenarios. I'm going, if we significantly changed the inputs in terms of spend, resources, what we do, how will that help us get to the output?
Awesome. I was in Ryan Stewart's mastermind in Miami, and there was 30 other SEO agency owners, and it was an acquisition boot camp, and nearly everybody in the room, even people that have been running their agency for like 20 years, all the leads came from referrals, and it's not a consistent lead machine. It's nice to have, and it's a strong thing. But you sound like you're very well versed in lead gen and channels. What kind of channels are you investing in and getting the most success from?
So right now we're investing more in, and I think we're in a, I'm very grateful for the fact that up until, not up until, but, our growth has largely come from referrals, as you say. I don't think we're unique in that, but our growth has always come, but it is not predictable. And I think, that's the referrals will drive you some growth. Sometimes that can be rapid growth. Sometimes that will be slower growth. But you can't control it the same. There are things that you can set up to encourage referrals. But I think, ultimately, where we're focusing right now is that wider awareness piece, and we're having conversations such as how do we get in front of as many of our target audience or our potential clients as possible and let them know who we are. So I'm a big fan of events, of content that adds value. I'm a big believer that if, what you get back what you put out there. So, we're investing heavily into video content for next year. We're investing heavily into an event series. We ran one virtual event this year and one in-person event. We're massively expanding what we do there, meet more people.
I was at the in-person event. It was great.
And that will be bigger and better next year. That will be even bigger and even better next year. And I think, from that, we're investing more into things where we can meet people, but meet the right people. And I think, going beyond that, almost, we're going to the next level of where we have done before. Previously, we've been very, very much about, meeting people who are ready to buy. We're now in a lucky position to be able to think a little bit further ahead and go, how do we meet people who don't need or want what we offer right now, but how can we build relationships with them over 3, 6, 9, 12 months so that when they do want, we are front of mind. And I think it's almost, it's almost that brand marketing, and I think, that there comes a point when you're in sort of startup mode, you can't, most businesses can't afford to invest in brand marketing, which is harder to prove the ROI. It has a longer return rate than maybe straight up sort of, direct acquisition of ready to buy leads. And I think, I talk about it a lot. We are out of startup mode. We've been out of startup mode a couple of years. We're very much in sort of, maybe going back into scale up mode, and I think, it's absolutely fine for a business to enter that scale up phase multiple times. And it's, what do we need to do to get to that next level? And I think the reality is now to get, to go into the scale up phase that we're about to go into for 2025, we need to go and make a noise at a different level of the funnel than we did 2-3 years ago.
I love it. James, honestly, I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this. I think there's a lot of value in this, but we're going to have to end it there. Where can people find you?
People can find me over on LinkedIn, am I still allowed to say X or Twitter? I don't think many people use that anymore. And I'm now on Blue Sky, but also the agency at digitaloft.co.uk. Not just me, there's lots of the team posting great content every day. So yeah, go and check us out.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video and got some kind of value from it. If you did, please make sure to leave a comment in the comment section and let me know any feedback that you have for future videos. And of course, hit that subscribe button because we will be releasing videos every single week. So you're going to want to stick around. Thank you and see you in the next one.